They decided who I was before I ever opened my mouth. One look at my jacket, my shoes, the way I stood there trying not to look tired, and I could see it click behind their eyes. Not important, not urgent, definitely not someone who belonged at the front of the line. And, yeah, I noticed it, because when you've spent your whole life being underestimated, you learn to read rooms fast. What they didn't know was that this moment, this random humiliating moment in a crowded airport, was about to flip their entire night upside down. It was the night before New Year's freezing rain slapping against the glass walls of the terminal, the kind of cold that creeps into your bones and makes everyone impatient. Flights were delayed everywhere, people stretched out on the floor guarding their bags like lifelines. I wasn't there for a vacation. I was exhausted running on caffeine and willpower trying to catch the last flight out to the West Coast. My mom was in the hospital. I just needed to get on that plane. That was it. No drama, no statements, just a seat, a blanket, and a few hours of silence. I didn't look impressive, I know that. Faded jacket, scuffed boots, hair pulled back because I didn't have the energy to make it look nice. No designer bag, no flashy watch. Just me and a backpack that had been everywhere with me for years. I stepped up to the priority counter because that's what my ticket said. Priority. And the guy behind the desk, let's call him Mark, barely glanced at my boarding pass before his smile tightened. "I think you're in the wrong line," he said, tapping the counter like he was doing me a favor. I told him calmly, "No, I'm not. That's my flight." He sighed, loud enough for the people behind me to hear. "This line is for priority passengers." I could feel eyes on my back. You know that feeling when strangers start quietly judging whether you're about to cause a scene. I handed him my ID. He didn't even take it at first. Just looked at me, then at my jacket, then back at his screen like reality and his assumptions were arguing with each other. "We're oversold," he said finally. "You'll have to step aside." I felt that familiar heat rise in my chest. Not anger yet. Something sadder. That old, tired feeling of being dismissed without a real reason. I told him I'd checked in online that my seat was confirmed. He scanned the ticket. I watched his eyes widen for half a second. Just a flicker. Then it vanished. "There's been an issue with your payment," he said. "It didn't go through." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so obviously untrue. "It cleared weeks ago." He leaned back, folding his arms. "System says otherwise. And since we're oversold, we had to release your seat." Release. Like it was his to give away. That's when the other guy showed up. The loud one. Expensive coat, confident stride voice that filled space without permission. He slapped his phone on the counter and said, "I need 2 seats upgraded. Now." Mark's whole posture changed. Shoulders back, smile wide. "Of course, sir." I stood there listening as Mark explained how tight things were, how difficult it was, and then, like magic, how he'd just managed to free up 2 seats. My seats. The man laughed, glanced at me like I was furniture, and said, "Guess it's your unlucky night." I told him quietly, "That's my seat." He laughed harder. "Yeah, you sure about that?" Mark shot me a warning look. "Ma'am, you need to move along." Something inside me snapped, not loudly, not explosively, but cleanly like a rope pulled too tight. I pulled out my phone. Not to yell, not to threaten, just to document. Mark reached over and knocked it out of my hand. It skidded across the floor screen, cracking. The terminal went silent. Security appeared. I was escorted away like a problem that needed to be removed so the night could continue smoothly. Mark watched me go with that small, satisfied smile. He thought it was over. He thought I was just another inconvenience erased. What he didn't know was that I wasn't calling customer service. I wasn't calling friends. I was calling the operations director. The building we were standing in wasn't just an airport terminal to me. It was part of a portfolio I'd spent years building quietly, deliberately. The paperwork had finalized that afternoon. The timing was cruel and perfect. 10 minutes later, everything stopped. The jet bridge froze. The plane stopped moving. Police officers walked in, not rushing, not panicked, just focused. And right behind them was the director face like stone eyes scanning until they landed on me. Mark's confidence evaporated in real time. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. The director asked one question. What happened? I told him exactly what happened. No yelling, no embellishment, just facts. Mark tried to interrupt, tried to explain, tried to shift blame. The director held up a hand and shut him down with a look. "Bring the plane back," he said. We walked down the jet bridge together, Mark trailing behind, pale shaking. Inside the cabin, the loud man was already settled in drink in hand, feet stretched out. He scoffed when he saw me. "You again." I looked at him and said, "You're in my seat." He stood up, puffed his chest, started listing who he was, how much money he managed, what kind of connections he had. I let him finish. Then I told him calmly that the seat had been reassigned back to me and that he was being removed. The officers stepped forward. That was the moment his confidence cracked. He left muttering threats that sounded hollow even to him. I sat down, buckled in. My hands were shaking not from fear, but from the adrenaline finally crashing. Mark was escorted off the plane, badge removed, access revoked. Just like that. As we took off, I stared out the window and felt nothing triumphant, just relief and sadness, because it never should have come to that. The story didn't end there. Turns out the loud man had been flagged. Federal investigation. The seat Mark gave him wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. That decision cost Mark his job, his career, and eventually his freedom. Months later, I went back to that terminal. Same clothes, same energy. Just watching. I saw a gate agent help a stressed-out kid who'd missed his flight by minutes. No judgment, no attitude. Just empathy and problem-solving. That mattered more to me than anything else that happened that night. People ask me if it felt good. Getting justice, watching them fall. Honestly, not really. What felt good was knowing the system changed even a little. Knowing someone else wouldn't have to stand there feeling invisible. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been judged before you spoke, written off because you didn't look the part? And if you were standing behind that counter with that kind of power, what would you have done differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Argue with each other. Share your stories. Because moments like this aren't just about one person winning. They're about exposing the quiet assumptions we all live with, and deciding whether we're brave enough to challenge them.